Hey everyone, and welcome to our April webinar. In today's webinar, we are going to learn all of the workings of creating invoices in Grist. So we're going to start by setting up a document with the necessary fields, and then we'll walk through how to customize the invoice custom widget. So what you're looking at here is our invoicing template. Essentially, that's what we're going to be building today. We're not going to make it look exactly like it, but the structure will be the same. Here allows us to select an invoice. Now I'll switch between the two invoices using these arrows, but watch how this custom widget here on the right updates. So you see that the client information changes, the items all change, and of course, like the values based on the information in this invoices card and the items. So to get started, we're actually going to create a brand new document. So jump over to my team site here under the green Add New button, and we'll create an empty document. Just to start, I'm going to rename my table to Invoices. That's the first table I need. You just click the table name, change it to Invoices. Easy. Okay. Next, we're going to add the invoice custom widget so we can see the invoice change as we add and update data. So under the green Add New button, we're going to add a widget directly to the same page. And the invoice custom widget is a custom widget. So we select custom, and then we select the data we want to populate the widget, which is our invoices data. Obviously, we don't have much there, but we're setting it up. And then we want to select by our existing invoices table. So that when we select an invoice in our table, the invoice custom widget updates to show us that selected invoice. We'll go ahead and add that to our page. Next, we actually select the custom widget. These are so many custom widgets to choose from. The ones with the white header that say Grist widget are created and maintained by Grist Labs, but we do have some really cool community widgets in here. So definitely check them all out. Tons to see and explore. And we did do a custom widget webinar ways back, but we covered quite a few of these in past webinars. Okay, invoice and add a widget. Okay. So immediately it tells you what it needs to work. It needs read access. It needs at least one row of data in our underlying data table. And then we need select by set. Now we've already set this up when we added the widget, but if you do forget to do this while adding your widget, you can actually update it from the creator panel here on the right-hand side. So just make sure the custom widget is selected. You just click into it. You'll see custom at the top for the tab, and then you've got these sub tabs. Navigate to data, and here you'll see select by. If you hadn't selected it, it would read select widget, but we just want invoices, which is what we had set up prior. Okay, so up here, again, it needs read table access. We can do that again from the custom creator panel, this time from the widget tab, which is generally the tab that you have open. Scroll down, you'll see it actually prompts you telling you the permissions that it needs. So we're going to accept that it needs the read permission. Now it's set. And now the last thing we need is at least one row of data. So I'm just going to enter some garbage data here. And now I see the invoice populate. We at least see the template of it. Down here, we have this black info box. It tells us what columns are expected and which are ignored. Right now, A, B, and C are ignored because they aren't expected fields. I'll update A, B, and C to 3 of the expected columns and just watch how this black box updates. So you can update a column header just by double clicking on it. So I've updated to number. It's now an expected column. Obviously A disappears because it doesn't exist anymore. I renamed it to number, and number is now recognized. So I've got those three. And then we can add new columns for the remaining expected columns. So to add a new column, you click the plus sign, add a column. I'll add total. Now notice how it is still showing as expected. It's not being recognized. We need to unhide any new columns we add so that the custom widget can read them. So columns A, B, and C already existed when we added the custom widget. So it already had access. Any new columns we add will actually need to be made visible. So we can just click into the custom widget to select it. And then in the creator panel here, we can unhide our new column. So I unhide total and now it's recognized. And so now we just do this for the rest of our expected columns. And then I added one extra column here. It's not set up in this little black box, but I'll make sure we get this added. It's actually a new field that one of our dev team members added, and that's paid. And this actually adds a paid stamp to your invoice. It's really cool. So we'll use it today, but that's why it's not here yet, but we'll get that added. Okay, and so now I need to unhide all of those. Again, we just click into the custom widget to select it. And then in the creator panel, we can select all, and then we can show them. And now they're all recognized. Again, paid is ignored. It thinks it doesn't know what to do with it. It does. So we'll see that here in a second. Okay, I'm gonna get some data added here. Actually, let me do this side by side because we'll actually see it populate as I add data. So I've added the number and that shows here. I added the client, it shows up under the client name. If I add items updates. Now I'm going to ignore due and issued for now in this little black box. It'll actually hide it. So we're going to do that last. If I add a note, it actually adds it underneath our summary. And then finally paid, I'm going to make this a toggle column. Change the column type to toggle. We'll do a switch. And then now if I mark it as paid, scroll down so we see it. Now we get this paid stamp. If I uncheck, it removes it, check it, it adds it. Very cool. Okay, so now we have some data populating our invoice. Here in the client column, we have the client name. We would probably add their address. It would be difficult to re-enter it every single time that you're invoicing a client. You might invoice them multiple times. So we'd rather keep the client information in a separate table. We don't have to re-enter their address every time that we invoice them. And then we only ever need to update it in one place. Additionally, it allows you to import addresses in bulk if you already have that data stored somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, add new widget to page. We'll create a new table. This will be the client's table. Move it so we still see the invoice. Now, if I clear the client column in the invoices table, this will update to show me what information it can take. So client.name is saying that in the client table, it can have a name column. Here we have street 1, street 2, city, state, zip. So that's what we're going to add here. Add myself a couple more columns. Okay. And then now I can add my client information. And again, you could import this into the table if you have it somewhere already. Okay, so now I have my client in the client table. but I want to actually get this data back into this client column. This client column should be a reference column pointing to the client's table, and then we can select our client from a list. So I'm going to change the column type to reference, tell it that I want it from the client's table, and I want to see the name of the client. And now I can select the Bluth company. Now it's just showing the client name because that's what's in this field, but we want to be able to pull the rest of this data here into my client field. To do so, we actually need to add a formula column named references with this formula down here. And it's telling us to do that. For structured address and item information, add this column with this formula. So we're going to add that. I'm just going to copy it, add a new column here, and then copy this formula. And then we hit the equals key to enter a formula. It turns the column into a formula column, and we just paste that formula. We don't see anything update though. We're still only seeing the Bluth company. We don't see their address. But remember, we just added a new column. We need to unhide it so that the custom widget has access. So go down, unhide, and now we have the formatted address with the client name. The next thing we should update is this Invoicer column. Let's see, where do we see it? Right there. That's populating this upper right-hand corner with our address, us as the invoicer. Now, this information is going to be the same on every invoice. So it's not something you want to have to type over and over again. We just want some default value. And we can do that using a formula. So I have my formula typed off to the side. I'm going to hit the equal key. We're going to convert this to a formula column, and I can paste this in. It's looking for all of this information. So name, street 1, street 2, city, state, zip, email, phone, website. And you can format your own formula in the same way and fill in your own information. So I'm going to hit enter to add our formula, and it looks really dumb right now. This doesn't look better than it did. The issue is that before I had entered text. So my column type right now is text. So in the column tab, I just want to update my column type to any, and now it formats it. Now it looks super nice. It even has some special formatting for email and phone number. It looks really good. Okay, so the last thing to address in this little black box is what I mentioned briefly before in this upper right-hand corner. If we add a due or issued date, it will actually hide this box. And so before I skipped it, I'm going to add a due date for the end of the month. And now that little black box is hidden because I added a due date. I also see the due date appear up here. And then we'll add an issue date of today. And now it shows issued, it shows due. This looks really good overall. Finally, we want the ability to invoice more than just one item at a time. So as it is, we can only invoice for bananas, but they need other things. So we can clear this items column to see what information it can accept. So here we see that items can be a list where each item has a description, a price, quantity, and total. So we can add a new table, items, with these 4 columns. So I'm going to add a new widget to this page. We're going to add a new table called items. And I'll just rearrange it so we still see our lovely invoice. Okay, so we have 4 columns we need to add: description, price, quantity, and total. So we can have a couple items. Let me make sure that the column types are correct. Okay. Looks good. So this total column can actually be a formula column. The total is just price times quantity. So we can do a formula there, price times quantity. And then we'll update the column type to numeric with a currency. The last thing we need here in this items table is actually an invoice column, so we can tie items to a specific invoice because we have multiple invoices, all with different items. So I'm going to insert a new column. And we want this column to be a reference column that points to the invoice table. And we'll select by number. And I only have one invoice so far, so I'm going to associate it with my 3 items. Okay, so now we have this items table that contains items for a particular invoice. Now we need to get these back into this items column in the invoices table. So items can be a reference column. I'm going to hit the equal key. We're going to convert that to a formula column. And the formula that we use here is actually a lookup records formula. It allows you to look up records in another table based on some criteria. So I want to look up information from the items table. And you'll see that it automatically starts suggesting things. And one of the things it suggests is look up records. It has 2 options here. This one lets me select and continue typing for some match, but this is actually the match I want. It knows that this is probably what I want. Invoice equals ID. It means that if invoice is listed in this column here, this invoice number listed here, then those are the items I want. So I'm going to click that so it fills the rest in. And then once more, because I had text in this column before, it still thinks the column type is text. I'm going to change it to any. Let me show you this invoice now. It's now populated with all of my items. Now it's still showing that subtotal and total that I had entered up here. If I delete that, it will auto calculate the subtotal and total for me. Okay. So we did it. We populated our invoice. It looks lovely. Everything up to this point is covered in our Prepare Invoices tutorial. You can find that in our Help Center. If you search invoice, it will be one of the search results. But it's a tutorial that walks through all of these steps, step by step, how to do this. Now that we've got our actual data to appear, how do we actually customize the invoice and make it look like it's from our company? We have to modify the actual code for the custom widget. The code for the widget lives in the Grist Labs GitHub, which you can access directly from this custom widget. So when I select the custom widget, our creator panel updates. Here we see information about our widget, and we see that the developer is Grist Labs. When I click that, it actually brings us directly to our GitHub page. Now there's tons of stuff here. What we want to focus on is the Grist widget repository. This is where all of our custom widgets live. But specifically, we're looking at invoices today. So we're going to click on the invoices one. And these are all the files that build the invoice custom widget. You can't modify the code directly here. We do have to make a copy of it and then host it individually. It's actually quite easy to do using GitHub Pages. I'll share a link to GitHub Pages now. The link I just shared, this is what it looks like. You will need a GitHub account, which is free. And then you would follow these steps here to create your repository. It's very simple. You just click this link and then you follow this formatting for the repository name. Easy as that. And then you create the repository. So if I click this link, create a new public repository, it's showing that I'm logged into my account. This is my username, Natalie Masasi. And so I would replace username with my username. Now it's showing it already exists because I already have a GitHub Pages repository, so I don't need to create one, but it is as easy as that. Navigate over to my repository here. Okay, so here's my existing one. So once you've created your new repository, you'll want to add our invoice code to your own repository. So going back to the Grist Labs, in the Invoices folder, these are the 5 files that build the invoice custom widget. So we need to download each of them. You just click into a file, and then you just have this download button. And you would do that for all 5. Now I've already downloaded them all, but again, you would just click on the title, download. You can also go back to the Grist widget folder or repository, and you can download the entire code as a zip file, but it does download all of the code for all of these other widgets. So personally, I think it's easiest just to go to Invoices and download the 5 rather than downloading all the code, but you do have both options. And then now we need to add these files to our own repository. So jumping back over to my github.io repository, we click this plus icon to create a new file because we need to create a new folder. And I'm going to do invoice-webinar. And then if you add a backslash after that, then it creates that folder. And I'm just going to create a junk file here that I'll go back and delete, but it creates my folder, which is what I want. Okay, so now I have my invoice webinar folder that I can upload all of my files to. So I'm going to add a file. I'm going to upload files. Now it won't show you my little computer thing where I select my files, but you would just go download those files or select the files from your download folder that you had just downloaded. They get added, and then you want to commit your changes. So now I have my files in my invoice webinar folder. I'm going to delete my junk file because I just wanted to use that to create my folder. Okay, so I've got my 5 files. Now these 5 files need to be very specific names. If you've downloaded something with the same name before, it's going to add this number just to change the name so it's slightly different. So you will need to go back and modify your files to have the correct names. So I'm just going to edit it and remove this one. So it's index.html, commit that. And so these should be the exact names of your files. And again, if you haven't downloaded anything with the same names, it won't be a problem. I have, so that's what it is doing for me. Okay, so now we want our custom widget to point to our own code here. You can update your custom widget to use a custom URL. Basically, we're going to use this up here, nataliemasasi.github.io/invoicewebinar/. That is what you'll see. Okay, so let me jump back to our document here, and we want to change our widget to be a custom URL. And I can just put my custom URL in there. So it's https:// and then it's the link to your GitHub pages followed by the folder where your code is stored. Okay. So it's working. You do have to update your access level to read, and then you'll be able to see the data. I have found that it's easiest to view your changes to the code in an incognito tab because we'll constantly need to clear cache in order to see updates. You just copy this link. So here on the left is my incognito window with my custom widget link. And then on the right is my actual Grist document. Okay, so with the custom widget, you can actually click a filled out invoice to see an example, just some fake data. And then next, we actually want to modify our code. So here I am in my invoice webinar folder. The first thing we want to update is some coloring. And so styling always lives in the CSS folder. And so that's where we're going to go first. You click the little pencil icon to edit. And then now we want to change colors on things. One trick, let me expand this real quick. If you want to find out how, what class something is, you can highlight it, right click, and inspect. Now this is me really tiny, so I don't expect you to see this, but here where it's highlighted, it's telling me that the class is name. And I highlighted this bit up here. So if I change the class name coloring, that's what's going to change. That shows the different classes and what changes in those classes. So for example, thanks. That changes the coloring for thank you. Meta here, we changed this. This is the hex code. And you can change it to whatever hex code you want. So I copy or select it. I'm going to paste my new hex code. Meta changes this upper right hand invoice number, issued, due. Scrolling down, supplier. Let me copy my hex code for that. If you don't know the hex code for a particular color, but you have a picture with your logo, you can upload that. If you look for like hex code color picker, something like that on Google, you'll find places where you can upload a photo and it'll tell you the hex codes. Supplier updates. I don't have my little screenshot open, but in that cheat sheet, you'll see it. I think it's the, oh, no, it's this blue text. I think it's supplier. And then I keep scrolling. I already knew what colors I wanted to change these things to. You'll play around with it. But again, that cheat sheet will tell you which areas. So like items was through here. This is actually the items table in the middle, but client items and summary are all together here. And I'm changing them all to the same color. Name, that was the first one we looked at using inspect, and that's where it says thunderous applause at the top. This is the color for this total box here. Thanks actually updates the text color for thank you. Most of the time, it's pretty obvious what you're changing based on the class. They'll make it as obvious as possible. Okay, and then here we see print, and then below it'll be print hover, and that's this print button. So by default, it's this color here, and then there's a hover here, and that's the color it changes upon hover. So let me change this one. Again, this one's the default. So right now it's just red, and then the hover color. I think that looks like everything. Okay, I'm going to commit these changes. I'll leave a note saying I'm changing colors. Okay, so the perk of doing all of this in this incognito tab is that you can use CTRL F5, which will do a hard refresh on the page. And we'll show you the updates. Now, it does take a little bit for these updates to go through. And so we'll make another change and then we'll go refresh it and we should see the colors. And we'll keep going back and forth. So the next thing I want to actually change is the font that we see here. And that's really easy. That's right up here on the top. I'm going to edit again. And I can just change the font. I'm going to change it to Rubik. And again, I'm going to commit my changes. You don't have to do all of this in separate commits. You could do it all at once, change everything all at once. But just for learning purposes, we're just doing it in chunks. Let's do a refresh. Let's see if our colors have come through. Yes, there we go. So now all of our colors have updated based on the hex codes that I just went through and added. We'll see the font change here shortly because I only just committed it. It takes a minute or so. Now the next thing I want to do, if I expand this, it's more obvious that these numbers don't quite match up with the headers, especially when it's wide like this. I actually want to change the alignment of all of these numbers. So I can, again, highlight, inspect, and it'll tell me the class to look for. So it's telling me money. Close that out. Let me scoot this back to the side. I can use Control F to find the class money. So money and number are together, and that's controlling the alignment of these three columns. And I'm just going to change it to left. Okay, let me refresh. Maybe we'll see. Oh, there we go. Our font has changed. So we can see that update. We only just committed the change to the alignment. So that'll come here in about a minute. And again, it's just Control F5, which reloads it. So the next thing I actually want to cover is how to add columns. Let's say I wanted a SKU number in this items table. How would I add that? So now we're messing with the structure rather than the styling. I told you that the CSS file is for styling. I'm going to go back to Invoice Webinar. Index.html covers your structure. I'll click Edit. Now, again, I want to add a SKU number to the left of this table here. So if I don't know HTML, the key thing to look for here is like description, unit price, quantity, total. I'm looking for those headers. Here we go. Okay, so there's my headers. This is a table here. TH, these are my headers. So I just want to add another header before description or SKU. Now I also need to tell it what information to bring into the columns for that. So just copy the formatting for another column. Oops. And then I'll do item.sku instead of item.description. And I'll have to add that to my underlying data table. The other thing I want to do is actually remove the deduction column in the next table. So see, we have deduction here. I want to get rid of that. So to remove a column from a table, this is our summary table right below it. So I see subtotal, here's deduction, taxes, total. So I want to remove the whole thing for deduction. So this whole part would be removed. There we go. And that'll actually remove the deduction field from the second table. I'm going to leave myself a note added. Okay. So let me go back. We still haven't seen this alignment change. So let me refresh. Okay, so now it's left aligned, looking really good. Obviously, it doesn't see that we've added the skew column or removed deduction yet. That'll come through very shortly. Now, this fills in fake data based on this example data file. You don't have to do this step. I'm just going to do it so that we see the fake data populate here. Let's see, in the items table, I want to add skew. So that's for the first record, and then here's that second record example. And then I can delete deduction. Again, you don't have to do that step. This is just the example data. So I'm just using it so we can see it populate in our table. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, now we see that the skew column is there. Obviously, our example data was just committed. It's going to take a minute. But we also see that the deduction is removed. We're moving along. Obviously, the spacing down here, not ideal. It looks kind of dumb. Subtotal and taxes are really small, and then total is huge. So we can modify the spacing. I'm going to just highlight subtotal. We'll inspect it. And here we see that there's a couple classes. We see title for the actual subtitle, but just above that, we see the class is part. So we can look those up in our code to see what controls this width. So that's in styling. Click edit. Okay, so I know that part was one of them. And here we've got some different styling for it. Okay, here I see a width. That's good. And then it looks like total doesn't have a width. So we just control width with part. So subtotal is one part, taxes are another part. Each one currently takes up 20%, which means that total takes up the remaining 60%. We're going to change this to 30. So that subtotal takes up 30% of the width, taxes takes up 30% of the width, and then total will take up the remaining 40. Okay, so when we refresh, we probably won't see that styling change yet, but we should see our skew fill in. There we go. Okay, so that's come through. We're just waiting on this width to update. But so far, it's looking really good. So while we wait, let's go take up the whole screen with this. So far, so good. Again, we need to add that skew column in our items table so that populates. And so now it's filling in those skew numbers with our skew column. It's looking really good. Again, this width is going to update shortly. Now we still have taxes here, and we want that to calculate really based on our total here. So I'm going to click the equals key, and that turns it into a formula column. And I'm actually going to use the formula AI assistant here. So let's say if taxes are 9.6%, what are the total? What are the taxes for the total for the items on this invoice? Why is it using our total column? Again, but not say total. So let's try that. Okay. So now it's totaling these values down here for all the items in our invoice, calculating the taxes. Let me change the column type to numeric. And so now we have this tax value. This subtotal, again, is calculating by itself based on these values. Taxes, we've got our formula, and then total is summing those together. So it looks really good. Let's check out. There it is. See if this width got fixed. Okay. There we go. Looks much nicer. These are all taking up roughly the same amount of screen space. Looks good. Okay. Now the last thing I want to cover is adding an image. For this, honestly, I used ChatGPT for most of this code. It is pretty code heavy. And so you can just tell ChatGPT where you want your logo, and it'll walk you through most of it. So let me put this back on the side. Go back to my code. So first off, I need an image to add. So I'm going to upload an image of our logo. So I just selected it from my computer files. We've got this logo. I'm gonna commit that. Now I've got this logo file along with the other files that build this custom widget. So first, we actually need to add the logo to the structure, and that's the index.html file. Again, this is where ChatGPT helps because your github.io is public. You can just share a link to it with ChatGPT, and it'll help tell you where to put this based on where you want your image. So I actually want to add it. I'm going to add it up here to the left of invoice and invoice number. Okay, my indentation looks good. So we're adding this class logo so that I can control the styling on it. This is the file name. I added some alt text. Okay, so we want to commit this. And then the next thing we want to do is actually add some styling because it's going to add the image and it's going to be crazy big and look horrible. So now we need to style it. And again, the styling is done in the CSS file. Once again, ChatGPT is your friend here. So first off, I'm going to add some new code. So I'm adding all of this here that's highlighted. Again, generated by ChatGPT. I told it what I wanted, where I wanted the logo, how I wanted it to look, and that's what it came up with for me. And then I have to modify two existing parts as well. So I'm going to commit these changes. Again, ChatGPT, that's the way to do it with adding the image. So you know where to add it, what styling you need to change. Okay, so if I refresh this page, only our first commit will probably come through. So it's going to be a massive logo probably. Yeah, huge. So it looks awful. Takes up way too much space. But if we give it another minute or two, then our additional styling will come through and it will set the max height. It'll look a bit better. Let's see if enough time has passed. There we go. Look how good that looks. Okay. So now our logo is in the upper left. It's much smaller, looks much nicer. Again, that's ChatGPT help. So don't be afraid to share your code. Basically, all I did was say, what am I looking at? I'm looking at index.html over here. So I copied this URL and I just shared it to ChatGPT. I said, here's my code. This is what I want it to do. Can you help me? And it did it. So that's everything for creating and customizing your invoice. I know it's a lot. It's pretty in depth, especially with having to host your own code. But I hope everything was clear as we went through. If you do have any questions after and you're like working on your own invoice, feel free to post to our community forum. I'm going to share a link to that now. And you can definitely ask questions there once you're in and like working on your own. I know questions come up. I always get stuck too. Conclude there. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. I hope it was beneficial. Again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to post on our community forum and we will be happy to help. Have a great rest of your April, and we will see you in May for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.